Welcome to This Week in Location-Based Marketing, episode number 108, recorded live December 15th, 2012. On today's show, can Bing really perform as the underdog? What about the new Google Maps for iOS? And we get to the point on augmented reality. Plus, funding news, our resource of the week, and special guest Christian Geissendoerf of Yoose. Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode number 108, of This Week in Location-Based Marketing. We're recording this live early in the morning on Saturday, December 15th, 10 days until Christmas. My name, Rob Woodbridge from Untethered.tv, located smack dab in the middle of winter in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. Like literally the epicenter of winter. What's it like for you over there in Toronto, Asif?
It's green and warm and rainy, and we're people are looking for snow now, and we just don't have any. So
yeah, that's great.
Anyhow, yes, it's Asif Khan from the Location-Based Marketing Association, and always happy to do this with you, Rob.
Well, I was in Toronto this week for 3 days for some meetings, and you do have green grass. You don't have any leaves on the tree, but you have green grass, and I got a blanket of snow outside. It's freezing, covered in ice, and I go to Toronto, and it's like, oh, man, green grass. You guys are out there mowing your lawn. It's December 13th. Come on! It's
crazy, yeah. Well, you can ship some over here. My kids are constantly complaining about the lack of snow.
Well, forget that. I would never be that guy. I'd never be that guy. Well, this is episode number 108. Obviously, we are 10 days away from Christmas. That means it's last episode before Christmas, and it's probably our third last episode before the end of this calendar year of 2012. Very exciting, great year. We're going to see if we can summarize a few of these things in the coming weeks. But, this show just doesn't get any, the news doesn't stop. The show just keeps getting bigger. We're throwing away stories that, a year ago or 6 months ago would have been the lead story, just simply because of the impact that location is having on this world, on the mobile space, and on how we do business. Pretty awesome. Before we get into any stories, gotta say hello to our new viewers, our returning viewers, the folks from who are coming in from either Street Fight Mag or GPS Business News. Thank you guys for coming in through there. Thank you guys for watching this. Thank you, GPS Business News and Street Fight Mag, for syndicating our content. Welcome, everybody. Hey, and if you're new, hey, I'm Rob. That's Asif. We are...
Hey.
Yes, we are the guys that bring you This Week in Location-Based Marketing. So a big show, but before we jump into it, I want to talk about, you were in San Francisco at what turned out to be like a media frenzy. As you were telling me before we started recording, a media frenzy show. Talk about what you were doing, talk about who was there, and your impressions of it, Asif.
Yeah, so I was out at Mobile Loco in San Francisco, one-day conference being put on by Mark Evans and his crew over there. So it's a show that's been going on for a couple of years now. Great turnout, a few hundred people out there, and great companies, great content that he put together. The highlight of which, at least in terms of the draw, was an interview with Andrew Mason, the CEO of Groupon, done by TechCrunch, and it was interesting because there was so much media in the room, like cameras, huge cameras and lenses all over the place, flashing and trying to capture it, and very little content. Basically, first of all, I was surprised that Andrew Mason even agreed to do the thing, or didn't pull out last minute. There's a lot of PR people in the room, making sure he was going to say the right thing, or in this case, not say anything at all. But yeah, I mean, the speculation was, is he going to step down? Is he gonna, what's he going to do? But it turned out to be a non-event, anyways. But other than that, the content was great. There were some phenomenal panels, some great discussion. So kudos to Mark and his crew for putting on an overall great event.
That would have been great if he just stood up and said, before you ask any questions, before this thing begins, mic in hand, I quit, slam the mic down, and walk off the stage, because I think that's what everybody's expecting to happen, or for him to get booted anyways because of the disaster that is Groupon. But that's not what we're here to talk about. But the event, you said 300 people, great panels, great content except for that interview. It was good?
Yeah, no, the discussions were great. Like there was an interview with Bill Gurley, well-known VC in the Valley there, with Bloomberg, and phenomenal insights coming from him in terms of some of the companies that he's involved with, and just great panels overall, like some great discussion. Shasta Ventures was on one of the panels. They're the guys involved with Red Robot Labs and TaskRabbit and a few other things. So there's a lot of good discussion going on.
Well, you know what? I'm not going to put you on the spot, but I am kind of going to put you on the spot because I want to know. So you've traveled. I mean, basically 50 weeks out of the last 52 weeks, Asif, right? You've had a couple of weeks at home this year,
something like that.
Do you have the ability to stack up these events that you go to? Take out the LBMA events, but do you have an ability to stack up the events that you've been to? And does one over the last year really, now that you're done traveling, does one really resonate? You're like, oh man, like you, Asif Khan, the founder and at the epicenter of location-based marketing, learned something at. Was there anything like that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think a couple of the ones that are, sort of out on the outskirts of, where all the activity is around mobile and location. Some of the events like CETW, Consumer Engagement Technology World, some of the digital signage, related events, some of the events that are, kind of on the, the sort of the more traditional side of geo, mapping, navigation. I always pick up things from that because it's not firsthand for me. It's it's an area that's really important, and so that's where I get the most value personally. The events like this, honestly, we're, by doing a show like this that we do every week, we're sort of on top of tracking what's going on around a lot of these companies that are being talked about, at a show like Mobile Loco. So I don't learn a lot, but I get a chance to connect with a lot of the great companies. I
think that's got to be the key. It's like they become real people and real faces and real relationships, and
exactly.
That's pretty cool. Well, we've got it's great. Now you're home, and we can focus on the show for the next couple of weeks, and then you're back out in January in a new year. With new budgets to spend and new challenges to overcome. So
something like that, yeah.
All right, so
and the first show that's sort of at the top of the year really is the Street Fight Summit, which is back on for January 15th, 16th. Yeah. So I encourage people to go out to that in New York. It's going to be 2 days again of great content, and for me that it's a really good event to kick off the year because. It does do a decent job of bringing sort of all things local together, from various aspects of the industry. So I'm really looking forward to that one.
So that's mid-January in New York City, the Street Fight Summit.
Yeah. By the way, if you are in New York City, it's the same week as the National Retail Federation's big show. They're a huge show. So it's a great week to be in New York.
Stick around. It's too bad it wasn't like Barbados or Florida or somewhere warm, right? Like, God, that's probably why it's done in January in New York. A great city, but still it's cold. Not as cold as Ottawa. All right, let's say we get this show on the road. Really dive into some of the news items that happened this week. We've got our usual bevy, 5 great stories. We've got a number of funding and acquisition stories, including one. By a regular on Untethered.tv, Lenny Rachitsky's company, Localmind, being scooped up. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Certainly got some Bing, Google news. We've also we're going to talk a little bit about the new iPhone app for Google Maps, which is released this past week. International news, obviously, we got a special guest, Christian Geissendoerfer from Yoose. Was I even close with that?
You got it. Hang on.
So let's get this thing going. Big show, and of course we got a resource at the end. So without further ado, top 5 stories of the week. All right, our first story. Listen, I feel for Bing as the underdog. Google was once in this position. Google was the underdog of search, and then they came and became dominant. And now I look at them as the big brother. The overlord, this whole don't be evil thing is a facade, and these guys are now an aggressive business, and poor Bing and Microsoft is an underdog, but they're starting to get cues from Google, and hey, listen, why don't we do what Google does? So they've actually announced this People Places snapshot to every search result. And I haven't seen it in Canada, but this is a smart move by Microsoft and Bing to be able to at least get onto par at some point with Google, right?
Yes, absolutely. So, I mean, yeah, I'm not sure it's available in Canada, but if you're in the U.S., take a look at, just go to Bing, do a search, and you'll see basically the page is now broken into three sections, three columns, so to speak. So you've got sort of, this middle column between the main search results and the sidebar, the social sidebar. And this main column is this middle column, I should call it, not main column, is what they refer to as snapshot. And so within the snapshot, you have maps, you have movie times, you have restaurant menus, you have now people and places that's been added into that. And the interesting thing for me is in some respects, it's kind of like, generating search results, using location data and sort of, visual cues almost, kind of like what Google Goggles sort of does, in the mobile world. On an Android device, so it's kind of it really is interesting. It does kind of point to the future of where search is, moving and how it's evolving, and where Bing, can play in that.
Yeah, I'm with you. This is, I think that what this does very quickly is kind of, I think I pulled up a couple of screenshots here. There's the Bing, if you're not watching this, see what you're missing? There's the Bing one in Canada anyways. When I search for my home city of Ottawa, nothing really comes up. But when I actually go to Google and search for Ottawa, you'll see eventually there on the right-hand side, you've got all these facts about the city, right? So you get the overview of the city,
Yep.
you get the population of the city, you get everything that you need about the city. And what I find so fascinating about this is the reason they do this is to keep you in the site longer. So here's an idea that search was supposed to allow you to find something and then get to what you're finding very quickly. Now, search and Google and Bing are realizing that, listen, instead of sending people on their way, let's actually get them we'll pull all that information into Google, indexed on Google, and then what are we going to do? We're going to keep you there. We're going to give you as much information as we can, and we don't want you to go to those sites. That's the new business model. Every opportunity to keep you inside of Google or Bing is what they're trying to do. So, this is a new world for search engine and search engine optimization. If your information is available and accessible, they might not ever get to your website simply because Google and Bing are now indexing all that information and displaying it on their own website. I think this crosses a line, right? This is a tough thing to call. And at what point does the search engine become a portal? Right?
Yeah, no, totally. This is about maintaining traffic, right? I mean, this is about just keeping everybody on the page, putting relevant information in front of them, and doing that in a visual, location-sensitive way. To me, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So I like where they're going.
Yeah, it's a good business model if you can do it. So Bing adds this, the people and places, so location, very, very important play for Bing to at least catch up with Google. And then we're going to see how that translates into the mobile side, which would be very interesting as well. All right, our second story of the day. This company, this is a relationship that has been formed by Sina and AutoNavi. Talk about these two companies. What's the relevance here? Obviously, huge market that we're playing in right now, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, anything in China is huge, and so Sina is a microblogging platform, the biggest one in China, and it owns the Weibo service, which is just huge, 400 plus million users on Weibo. 400 million plus users. I mean, that's just, it's insane, right? I mean, other than Facebook, there ain't too many things out there with 400 million users. Anyhow, and they've teamed up with AutoNavi, which is as the name implies, it's a mobile mapping or navigation platform. And again, we're going to see more and more of these kinds of partnerships, not just in China, but all over the place. Between navigation systems, mobile apps, around navigation, Navigon, all this kind of stuff, and web oriented and chat oriented type platforms. And I think we're gonna, it just makes sense, right? People are connecting with people, and in the course of doing so, you need to, you need directions, you need, you need to find out where you're going and how to get there. And it's a logical fit for me to kind of, see the marriage of these kinds of things come together.
Well, think about
like this. It makes sense.
Think about the size of this. Like we joke about, you want to know the size of a market in China. We talk about, Apple's going in there. Everybody's trying to get into even Facebook, right there. But what is it? Weibo has what, 424 million users?
Yeah.
400 just in China.
Yeah, and AutoNavi itself, is no sneeze. I mean, they're 85 million users or something.
Well, it's incredible the opportunities that are there just within one country. I mean, the same would be said about India as well. I read also the statistic that 72% of the population accesses the internet from a mobile device, right? And that's growing. And so when you start to think about that, and then you put it up against like a global phenomenon like Twitter, at kind of 200 million or 100 million active users, this is 4 times the size of active users in one country. Well, I mean that's the scale of something like this, and it's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting for me. And the other thing too is Weibo, or Sina, the company behind Weibo, launched a beta version of Weibo for just for business. So not a consumer version of it, but a business application, which is cool too, because now you can see if you've got something like AutoNavi tied in there, some real value coming from maybe fleet management or small businesses that got trucks on the road and all that kind of stuff. Being able to connect with each other on the social side, kind of like a replacement for the old CB radio system, maybe something like that. In terms of communications, and then with navigation tied into it. So it's cool.
CB, I love it. Well, they say that that Weibo is going to be used by they estimate by 30% of China's population or internet population by sometime in 2013, and then you can understand why Facebook is aggressively courting the Chinese market and the Asian market, simply because they offered this. They're offering texting through the Facebook network, just texting alone. You don't need a Facebook account, but texting alone, and as opposed to SMS through some of these countries, simply because they need to find a way to onboard some people in other nations, and this is an example of that. 424 million users. That's half the size of Facebook in one country. That's what it's huge. It's a fight. And then, not even to mention, as you're saying, just about the enterprise and the business play. It's just, man, oh man. Yeah, the rest of the world is small compared to this. Not small. We're big in stature, but small in population. All right, so that's Sina and AutoNavi partnering. Somewhere in that story, somewhere in that whole dialogue, there was that story. All right. Our third story, I don't know if this was brilliant marketing or just serendipity or shit luck, whatever it is, but obviously everybody knows by now that Google Maps has come out on iOS, and to a flourish of praise and like people crying in the streets and jumping for joy and going places they've never been before on purpose, right? Google Maps finally launches on iOS. What a story.
Yeah, I mean this is I don't even know where to go with this, because honestly, it's Apple, I think, was in their right at the time to, my personal view on this is to try and do their own. Obviously, they didn't put enough effort into that into it. We know mapping is not something that's very easy to do, and I don't admonish them for trying to kind of go on their own around mapping. I think Apple's always been about, we can do it better, we can do it ourselves, we can do it like that. But there's something to be said for quality before you actually release something. And mapping is one of those things that takes a lot of time and effort to build quality mapping. And so here we are. I guess 3 months later, after Apple tried to do it on their own, and Google's back with their own iPhone mapping app. Anyways, And apparently it's beautiful. Couldn't have been better designed. It's all these things. What I do like about it, without going too much into it, is I do like that Google in this newest version for iPhone has brought some of the features that was only available on Android before, Android devices before, to the iPhone now. So like all the turn-by-turn stuff was not there before on Apple. Which is obviously, you got to have that on any quality mapping app these days. So to hold it out and say it was only available on Android, in the past and not on the iPhone is, I'm glad they've corrected that.
Yeah, and I'm sure that a lot of that had to do with the fact that it was baked into the operating system. So, you needed an operating system refresh, and this is the same thing with the YouTube app that was taken out of iOS 6 as well. But this gives them a little bit more freedom. Now, the challenge was always that, listen, with a native app installed on the device, is anybody really going to go and download the other app by Google? And obviously, I just can't think about this.
Obviously, people are.
Well, yeah, it's just a few. But the reaction has been stellar. I don't know if they could have orchestrated a better PR and marketing campaign than what happened over the last 3 months with the way that the Apple Maps rolled out and was completely dysfunctional. I didn't realize people were so passionate about their maps, their mapping software. And you know what? I believe that Apple will eventually get this right? It might be too late, but they'll eventually get this right. They're putting some people into this. Yeah. But think about the timing this week. All right, where Australian police issue a huge warning that says, listen, don't use Apple Maps because it could be deadly, right? Because it sends you in places that you shouldn't go. And then like a day later, Google Maps drops to the reaction to the flourish of this crowd. And we talked about, maybe that Google missed a big opportunity about launching this right when iOS 6 came out. But nobody could predict that Apple Maps, maybe some people could, but I think the average person couldn't predict that Apple Maps was going to be so bad at the beginning, and they've iterated and made it a little bit better. But think about that pent up. This is a lesson for app makers all over the world: is you've got to build demand and anticipation so that when that app hits the market, it just within a day there was 1,500 comments, 5-star comments, glorious reviews. It made CNN. Gary Vaynerchuk's on Piers Morgan talking about Google Maps. I'm like, this is an incredible PR marketing campaign from a company that didn't get it. And to boot, the app is beautiful. The UI is stellar.
It's very much something to look at. I mean, the only thing that's really missing functionally in this thing now, compared to the one on the Android platform, is none of the indoor mapping stuff inside of malls that we talked about with Google over the last little while that you can get on Android is available on the iPhone version.
Right.
That's okay.
Well, and the other thing is that there's no, there's no local mapping. So it's all, it's cached, but you're not going to get local mapping. You still have to be connected somewhere to some kind of network right now. But that'll come. I think that there's just a sense of relief, a global sense of relief that there's an iOS version of Google Maps that actually has real-time traffic. Anyways. It's so funny. What an example of, I don't know, pure luck or great marketing. I don't know, genius or just serendipitous luck. I don't know. But Google Maps launches for iPhone. I'm sure you've downloaded if you have an iPhone, because everybody, all 160 million people on iOS have downloaded this app. I'm sure of it. All right. How about we jump to another story? Our fourth story, this is a company, TeliBrahma launches an app, an augmented reality app called Point. And I downloaded this. Why don't you explain what it is? Maybe I'll give an impression of my experience with it.
Yeah, it's yet another augmented reality app, not that dissimilar from the NetPage stuff that we talked about a little while ago. This is about layering on top of print in particular. These guys have done a lot of work with some pretty big brands: Dove, Nokia, Nike. They're based in Bangalore in India and have an office in New York as well. But it's an Indian company. They received about 40. They were one of 10 companies in India that got funding a little while back from Intel Capital. you know, have some pretty interesting backing as well, like from other VCs. So you know, these guys are nothing to sneeze at, especially in the Indian market. What I'm really excited about it, you know, functionally, I don't think there's a lot different than many of the AR apps that we've covered on the show. What I like about it is yeah, I like when I see companies who are successful in, you know, markets like India, you know, try and bring their stuff into, you know, into the U.S. or into the North American market as well. That for me is an encouraging sign to say, okay, you know what, you know, you know, what we do isn't only, you know, applicable to the Indian market; it works everywhere. And we work with some great brands over there, and we want to work with those brands in North America as well. So that is the part I like about this.
Yeah, absolutely. It just, you know, I think that the more competition, we've always talked about this as being a global market for location services or GPS or AR. And I think that you know, a lot of the innovation is happening outside of North America. And people forget that this is a globally competitive landscape. And you know, we talked about another company a couple of weeks ago called NetPage that really blew my mind, which was that episode of that issue of Esquire magazine. And I really love that. And in fact, I was meeting with some publishers this week and to talk about things like that, about how to bring mobile and location and that kind of stuff into the print publications. And NetPage was a really good example. And Point is like that, a little bit richer, a little bit more cumbersome. The thing with NetPage was it was much faster. I found faster experience than it has been with Point. Point goes out and downloads media and then starts to play media, very rich videos, audio clips, great interactivity. But this is a nascent industry, and to call this augmented reality, I don't know if I would anymore. You know, I think that this is just how did you classify it when we talked about NetPage? It was image.
Blipper calls it image recognition,
and that's what it is, right? Like you know, it scans a page and then it plays something over that. It goes to the internet and pulls something down, and it's not augmented reality. So I don't like the label of that, but I love the image recognition piece, and that's much easier to understand and sell, I think, from a publishing standpoint. But you know, I like this, and I'm with you about bringing an international flair and having other countries lead this charge, and lead the innovation in this. It just means that we have to pick it up in North America if we want to compete. I like that. So if you're interested in that, you can go to TeliBrahma, which is TeliBrahma.com, or you can do a search for Point. And what I like about it is it's available on all platforms. Obviously, not only the Google, it's also iOS, but it's also for BlackBerry, Windows Phone, and Nokia. It's good for Ovi as well. So, really understanding their market, and from what I see, there's some really interesting concepts around how they're using it. So go and check it out. We won't explain it all here, but go and check it out. Yeah. TeliBrahma. Image recognition. That's the way that we should think about this. Image recognition, not augmented reality. Because when augmented reality hits, you're going to see something completely different than this, and you're going to be confused. It's like the 4G versus, you know, that conversation.
Yeah.
So
it's Google Glasses and all that.
Oh, yeah. Wow. All right. Our last story, it's going to lead into our featured product interview. But this is a company called Yoose, partnering with a company called, is it Komli? Komli. All right, so Asif, talk about this, and then talk about, and then we'll talk about the interview with Christian right after. It's a great lead.
Yeah, so I mean, sort of staying over in the Asian market a little bit here. So you have Komli Media is you know, one of the big guys as far as digital mobile ad networks out there, and Yoose is a company that based in Singapore that is really focused on aggregating those ad networks and then delivering geo-targeted you know, content or ads inside of those networks. So you know, you take a any ad network out there, you take any mobile app out there that you know, has you know, significant base. You know, be it, you know, the Weather Channel or you know, anything like that. You know, Spotify, anything. You know. And what you're talking about is you set of tools that Yoose has built that allows for those, and enables the ads that you're running on those platforms to be, completely, hyper local and geo targeted. And so that's effectively what they've done here is they partnered with Komli, who has, a network like that, and they've said, look, we've got the geo targeting secret sauce, to help deliver those ads, which we know, and we've seen lots of data that says, when a banner ad inside of a mobile app is geo-targeted and hyper-local, the click-through rates are much higher, relevance is much higher, all that kind of stuff, right? So effectively, that's what we're talking about here. And so, these things can go down to, I saw in one of the statements, 500 meters distance as far as targeting where an ad's being delivered. So I like it. Great relationship. And then, sort of piggybacking on this, I had a chance to sit down with Christian Geissendoerfer, the CEO and founder of Yoose, who was also the host for our launch in Singapore of our recent chapter there. So
I don't know how you do this, Asif, because I'll sit in a room with a number of people, and they'll come back to me and say, they'll talk about location-based marketing and targeted marketing like this as doesn't work, or they'll write it completely off. Do you ever face that?
Right.
Like, you must face that every day. Like this doesn't work. There isn't enough of a demand for something like this. I'll be walking down the street and somebody will notify me of something that I need to buy at that moment. But they completely dismiss it. And companies like Yoose, these relationships, Komli, it tells me that that's not true. And obviously why we do this every every week is that it's not true. But how do you break through?
You raise an interesting point. I think when you hear people say that and they start to dismiss it, I think the primary reason that they're sort of not really all that favorable around it is it comes down to numbers. It comes down to reach for them, and in a lot of cases, with many of these platforms, there's just not enough users. There's just not enough people out there, as far as the reach part is concerned. And so what I like about Yoose is because they're an aggregator, because they go out and they tie together a whole bunch of mobile ad networks, and then go and work with a brand that wants to run a campaign. They can deliver that campaign across multiple networks, increasing the reach, and still doing geo-targeting at the same time around that. So I think that what they're actually trying to address that exact issue, that pushback that you get, which is well, it doesn't work. It doesn't work because
there's a whole bunch of small networks,
small on a single network. Yeah. That you can't really get any real traction.
Well, a company like Yoose and companies like InMobi, these are huge ad networks that at some point are going to be big enough. Well, I think they both are to be able to bring the cream of the crop and have enough volume to be able to push this through. And then I always wonder about that. Traditional media, traditional newspapers, and how do they compete in a space like this? Or at some point, is it all going to be wrapped up in an InMobi or in a Yoose or the two or three other companies that are out there that are doing this? Because at some point, you're right, the audience is just not big enough, and we've got a whole bunch of small networks out there. But it's so frustrating to say that for people to completely dismiss this at its infancy. And my hope is that bringing stories about Yoose and your conversation with Christian, and bringing stories about InMobi and their reach, and other companies like that will hopefully dispel that myth that location-based marketing is a fad or something that will be dismissed very quickly, because it drives me crazy, because you can't argue with somebody who's like, nope, don't even want to talk about it, done, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's crazy. Well, and I like this. And if you're interested in a little bit more information, you're gonna set us up for Christian in a second, but you can go to Yoose, yoose.com, and check it out and check what they're doing out, and a lot of information about the relationship that they've got with Komli up there as well. So those were the 5 stories. Many more could have been in there. I think we have a number of them that we're just kind of trying to fit them in this week because it was a big week, and your story could have been in there. If you have a breaking story, if you have something that should be in here, if it's something that we should mention, if it fits within some of the deals that or the conversations that we've already had, you should reach out. We'll bring it in as a reference point, as another angle. So please reach out, untether@gmail.com or asif@thelbma.com. For those of you that are go ahead.
And the other thing I want to say too is if you've got a story, let us know. And we do get lots of great comments coming in, and people sending. I think almost every week now it gets the frequency is coming up in terms of people responding, sending us comments or sending us stories to take a look at, and we really appreciate that. The other thing too is as we gear up for 2013, we've got a pretty good audience on this show now. We've got a lot of people watching this thing and listening to this every week, and we're very much open to sponsorship. So if you're out there and you're listening and you're a regular viewer, and you're interested in sort of getting some visibility to your brand, to your company, this is a great platform for it. So contact us if you're interested in sponsoring the podcast as well.
Yes, no arguments there. None whatsoever. I like to continue to do this and feed my children at the same time. That's okay with you guys. I'll do a quick shout out. There's two things. One of them is Paul Starkey, who left a comment on Teller.tv at the bottom of this episode, the last episode, number 107, saying, "Love this week's show. You are getting better and better. What can I say but thank you?" And I would go right back to Paul. Mr. Paul, I'm going to pull you up here. Paul, thank you for leaving that comment. We really appreciate it. And Paul, maybe you should leave a website with us next time, and we'll promote that as well. But I bet you where Paul gets this is by subscribing to our RSS feed, and I think that you should do that as well. So if you're in iTunes, if you're in, we're in all of the ways that you can subscribe to it, not just iTunes, but go and subscribe to this. It'll be in your list. You'll be able to download it without thinking. You'll get this on Monday morning, and you will be able to be on top of it. You can go into your office and brag about how much you know about the location-based marketing world. That's what I do, just by sitting with Asif. So please subscribe. Please sponsor us and send us your news. All right, enough. That's our own little internal ad that lasted longer than the first 5 stories. All right, it's time to jump into our product, our interview of the week. So, Asif, leading off of the last story, you got to sit down with Christian Geissendoerfer and talk about Yoose a little bit deeper. Why don't you set this thing up and we will roll with this interview.
Yeah, Christian's one of those guys. He's just a guy that really understands what's happening around hyperlocal, especially in the Southeast Asian market. They've done a phenomenal job of putting together some great partnerships. Komli just being one of those. Great customers. So I had a chance to sit down with him and really dig into some examples of what they've been going at. So here it is, Christian Geissendoerfer. Well, it's that time again where we get to bring on a special guest. And this week, it's my pleasure to introduce Christian Geissendoerfer, who's the founder and CEO of Yoose out of Singapore. So, Christian, welcome to This Week in Location-Based Marketing.
Thanks, Asif, and welcome everybody here from Singapore, out of our office right in Chinatown, in a nice shophouse environment in the middle of the business district. And it's my pleasure to welcome you here out of Asia, yet working on Yoose, which I'm happy to share a bit more about.
Fantastic. So let's jump right into it then. Tell for our audience, obviously we have a global audience that watches this show. But, especially for those over in North America that might not be familiar with you, who is Yoose? What are you guys all about?
So Yoose is a hyperlocal mobile ad network, and we are addressing hyperlocal targeting with banner ads in applications, but on a global scale, yet for hyperlocal targeting. So what we are solving, or basically addressing, I would say, is to bring the possibility of hyperlocal targeting for a brand or an advertiser, but anywhere in the world, by delivering enough scale and enough impressions and therefore clicks and consumer engagement on that hyperlocal level.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the keys to the way your system works is really that you're working across many different apps. Is that correct?
Yes, correct. So what we are basically doing is we get into any app possible, and this is through tie-ups with various other networks and players and publishers, so that when a when an advertiser comes to us and asks for, let's say, 10 million impressions in the UK around 150 car dealerships over a month, then we go out and find those impressions for the advertiser and really make that happen. And same way we are able to target and send out ads at any place in the world, basically.
Fantastic. So, can you give us a little more specific example? Is there a particular client or two that perhaps you can just share with us? How you've helped them and the importance of location targeting in particular.
Sure. Let me start with an example from Asia Pacific with Australia, where we have helped Optus, one of the large operators, with the launch campaign for their 4G network just recently in September and October, where there were 4 major cities covered now with the 4G network. Australia is a huge country in the continent, so the 4G coverage is only on very specific areas. And we have supported that by displaying banner ads only in the 4G coverage area. So we've exactly mapped where 4G is available to display an ad which says 4G is available where you are right now. But that was supported then by a second banner and a second campaign running in a 2-kilometer radius around Optus stores. So in a 2-kilometer radius around the stores, you saw a banner again advertising the 4G offering, but basically prompting you to go down to the Optus store and to subscribe the 4G upgrade or subscribe a new plan.
Fantastic. That's great. And I think whether it's a carrier or a retailer themselves, that whole concept of sort of geofencing locations and then driving traffic inside of these ad networks, that's location targeted. Obviously, we're seeing huge demand for that. So glad to see that you're servicing that market.
We see it actually not only with retail. It's a lot of different examples. I could give. We've helped Accenture with a recruiting campaign in Malaysia, for example,
okay.
Or we have just recently also did a campaign for Sky, the cloud Wi-Fi access in the UK, where Sky has about 11,000 Wi-Fi access points across the UK, and we've put literally banner ads up which displayed always the name of the closest place where you had a Wi-Fi access point. So it says Coffee Nero, and it tells you the distance also, how far away you are from that place, for example. And when you clicked on it, it was a rich media expandable banner, which then was showing a map of the closest Wi-Fi locations around where you are. And you could zoom in and really have, in an ad format, a full-fledged map, and could find out more about the Wi-Fi locations from Sky.
Great. Well, it sounds like you're busy and you're active and you're doing lots of phenomenal stuff. So, I want to thank you for taking a little bit of time out of your schedule and sharing with our audience on this week in location-based marketing. So, again, we've been speaking with Christian Geissendoerfer, the founder and CEO of Yoose. Christian, thanks so much for being on the show this week.
Thanks a lot, Asif, and looking forward for our next interaction with you.
Thank you. Well, that was Christian Geissendoerfer, and I just want to thank him for spending some time and sharing with our audience a little bit of insight into what is Yoose and how all that is coming together, and obviously a great tie into the story with Komli. So thanks to Christian for that.
Yes, thank you, Christian. Thank you, Asif, for organizing that. I love the international flavor that these interviews are getting, and so really appreciate the fact that Christian was able to come on. Maybe you should be there. Hey, listen, here's a novel idea. Do you think we should interview you? Do you have a product or a service that fits the stuff that we're talking about? Reach out on untitled@gmail.com. You could be on the show. Hey. And my mother and Asif's mother will be so proud. And your mother, in fact, will be proud as well. All right, so thank you for Christian. Now let's talk about some funding and acquisition news. Asif, a big week. The news items just kept on rolling in, right? Up until last night, I was like, okay, we got to talk about this. We got to talk about this. We got to talk about this. And ultimately, we came down to, listen, we're going to try to cram it all into this. We don't want to extend the episode any longer than it already is. But there's a few. We're gonna cover kind of 4 stories in the top 3 here. The first one, which is something that both you and I love, a company called Farmigo raised $8 million for one of the most unique, interesting business models that helps local farmers I've heard on the planet, basically. So talk about Farmigo and I mean, who's funding this? Who are the smart people funding this?
I really, really love this story. So, so Farmigo, they launched something called Local Food Communities this past week, and along with the $8 million to back it. And really, what we're talking about is, the blending of locally grown produce, farm products, and home, effectively delivery of those products to your local community. Not home delivery, which has been the problem with a lot of these things, which is too expensive to actually do in an effective, scalable way. But connecting with local businesses, where you work out, where your kids go to school, become delivery points or destinations for local farmers to come and kind of deliver the stuff that you want. So, and we know, there's huge trending out there as far as nutrition and just the way, what people are eating these days around eating locally grown, close to home, produce. And so for me, this is a phenomenal business model that they put together here. Really, really like it. Really excited about the potential around this.
I am 100% I'm with you on this. Is that they say it's direct from local farms within 48 hours of harvest. You get to choose the produce that's available locally around you by putting in your zip code. At this point, it's U.S. only, and then you order it online. And then they have these things called Farmigo Tuesdays, where you go to a specific location, you pick up the packages or the produce that you've ordered. And I freaking love this. I love it. We have farmers markets. You do. There's this growing trend of community markets that is coming back into play, and this really capitalizes on it. And I love the fact that the companies raised $8 million. This is not a typical play that you would hear from VCs, but highly local, highly hyper local. And they're saying they have 4 producers joining weekly. If you are a farmer in a location that this serves, it behooves you to do this, right? It's also a lot better than.
Yeah, and the key thing here is that they're going after group buying. This isn't individuals. Like, this isn't you going and saying, oh, I want to buy a truckload of cucumbers this week for my house. What's happening here is they're getting businesses to sign up. They're getting school groups to sign up. They're getting, whatever, to be effectively a local distribution point or store almost. And then you as an individual can go to those places, you work in that building or you do whatever, and you buy through that. So it's group buying with, at a collective, sort of distribution point, kind of reduce the delivery costs around it. Really, really smart. And they've got some, interesting businesses already using it, like Etsy's using it, Kiva's using it, as corporations, being distribution points, and employees, sort of jumping on board.
So good. Go to Farmigo, farmigo.com for more information. I love it. I love this. $8 million. $8 million well spent. It does communities good. All right, our second story. This company. Up in Canada, we have this small carrier. It's called Koozoo. So I think every time I hear this Koozoo, I think of Koozoo, which is the theme. If you're from Canada, you'll know what I'm talking about. They raised $2.5 million. What is Koozoo, except for one of the craziest names on the internet? Asif?
A little San Francisco company, $2.5 million, coming from New Enterprise Associates and Tugboat Ventures, and a few other angels in there as well. It's a local, hyper-local information service, let's call it that. So, where you ask questions like, how big is the lineup at your favorite restaurant right now, or is it crowded at the beach, or, whatever. not that different than a little company that you and I are familiar with called Localmind in its form and function. So we know this kind of stuff works. We know there's certainly interest in finding answers to local questions, which is what Koozoo does. And now they got $2.5 million to do it even better.
Well, this is an interesting play, right? So what they're saying is go out and take your old devices, connect it to a Wi-Fi network, and put it in the window of, say you're overlooking a beach, which I would love to be, or you're overlooking your street or something. Yep. And in Ottawa it'd be the Byward Market. It could be wherever in Toronto or anywhere, and let it stream pictures so people can log on and see what's going on at that moment. And a very unique approach. It's an interesting approch.
Yeah, so it's not you're not querying an individual to get an answer to the question. There's a camera basically that's collecting information. For me, it kind of fits in with this shift around. I talk a lot now on a lot of the talks I give. One of the trends that we're watching is the shift from active location sharing and checking in and all that kind of stuff to passive, and this kind of fits in the same kind of discussion.
In my head I've got some business models that I see floating up, but I struggle to see, as the network grows, maybe there's an opportunity for business, but it still seems like a small business. But this plays really well into the fact that we were talking about this company called Localmind, Lenny Rachitsky and his partner Bo Howe. And these guys were just like it plays into this because this was a little bit more of an effort that required. It's basically Localmind is you're reaching into a domain expert or an expert about a location that might be at that location to get some feedback about whether the lineups are big or what the scene is like at a bar or restaurant. But they were just picked up by Airbnb this like a day ago. And it just shows that there is a market for something like this. But you think that the Localmind acquisition was an acqui-hire by Airbnb to get the talent?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I don't see. I can see some value to Airbnb around this platform, but my personal take on this is that what you're talking about here is that Localmind is really really small business. I mean, there's only really 3 or 4 guys there. They've raised some funding,
but three or four very smart guys. There are 3 or 4 very smart guys.
Yeah, very, very smart guys. So for me, this is a talent acquisition. This is, Airbnb recognizing, these are talented guys with some great ideas, and maybe there's some functionality there that they can incorporate into the platform. But if I was a betting guy, I would say, Localmind as a platform will not exist in the very near future.
Yeah, it's unfortunate for the, it's par for course, and sometimes I get angry about that if you commit to a platform and then it disappears. But I like Lenny, and I know what he's done, and I know his character and Bo, and interesting to be brought into Airbnb, and Lenny tweeted yesterday or checked in with Foursquare from Airbnb, so they're already integrated inside of Airbnb. It's like 24 hours later. But this, if you're interested in taking a look at this, if you have any insight about this, Koozoo is a very interesting company. These concepts, as you said, from active to passive check-ins, very interesting, and this is an emerging market. And you heard that from Asif right here. Is that I think that a lot of companies will migrate around what's going on here, and we've already started to see that with different approaches from Localmind to Koozoo. So if you're interested in Koozoo, go to Koozoo KOOZOO.com, and they raised $2.5 million to be able to expand on the way that they're doing the local lookouts, basically. And congratulations to Lenny. Way to go, bud.
Yes, absolutely. Great guys.
And I can't wait to see what happens next once they're out of Airbnb and they have cash in their pockets and they go out and do some more great things. All right, last funding news. A company called SpotHero raises a little bit of money, $2.5 million, which is a good amount of money for this company. Talk about SpotHero, Asif. Then we'll finish up with the resource.
Yeah, so this is $2.5 million. It's coming this time from Battery Ventures, 500 Startups, New World Ventures, and Lightbank. So some good pedigree in there. SpotHero is an interesting company. They're focused on helping people find and pre-booking available parking spots in their city. So at the moment, this is Chicago-based. These guys are in Chicago. They've been doing it in Chicago. And they're going to use the money to expand beyond the Chicago market into New York, Los Angeles, etc. But finding parking in some of these big cities is a challenge. And if I can know there's a spot, in a particular lot, close to where I want to be, and I can pre-book that spot, I can see some value in that. So an interesting business model, and apparently they've already done about $2 million in revenue from a service like this, and working in partnership with the lot owners and the garage owners. So helping them monetize in better ways.
Yeah, it just goes to show you that anything can be turned into a business, and especially the idea of just reserving a spot. A parking spot. Now they're available in Milwaukee as well, Chicago and Milwaukee, and expanding elsewhere. And the article that I read about these guys as I was doing my research, they said that they have an opportunity to become the Uber of the parking industry, which is very interesting. And I wonder if they're going to run into the same kind of union issues around parking as they do around cabs. But this is a really unique thing. Now, the one thing that they've got to be able to do is I would love to see a service like SpotHero be able to reserve, street parking, which would be next to impossible. Can you imagine that, the fiasco of trying to figure out how to street park? So this is parking lots only, and participating parking lots only, not all parking lots. But very interesting. If you're interested check them out, SpotHero.com. Just how it sounds, SpotHero.com. I think that there's a big challenge of how this scales, but SpotHero.com. I don't think $2.5 million is near enough to be able to roll this out, and I'm sure there's going to be competitors if there aren't already, and I think there are, in fact, quite a few. All right, those are the 3.5 funding and acquisition stories. We had 3 fundings in. Farmigo raising $8 million, Koozoo raising $2.5 million, and SpotHero raising $2.5 million, and then Localmind, obviously acquired by AirBnB. Terms undisclosed at this point, but I'm sure that this has been a great party week for Lenny and Bo. Congratulations, guys. If your story wasn't there, if you raised a little bit of money, if you were sold, if somebody bought you, invested in you, spent a little bit of time with you, if you closed a great big customer, whatever it is, reach out. Let us know, untether@gmail.com. We'll bring you into this fold. We'll talk about you. How's that? We'll just stroke your ego. Like, that's what we'll do. We'll mention your company name. That's it. So that is our funding and acquisition news. Please reach out, untether@gmail.com or asif@thelbma.com. All right, it's on to our last piece, the resource of the week.
Report from NextAge, which is a mobile ad exchange service. It's got a new report out. It says 24% monthly increase in ad spending from May to October on its real-time bidding marketplace. We're seeing a 33% monthly rise in location-based impressions, and 30% per month increase in demand for location-enabled ads. So for me, this is great. This is, the kind of data that, a lot of the people that you're talking to that say this stuff doesn't work, here's data that says it does, right? So I think, we're going to see more and more studies like this come out over the next little while. A lot of the studies that I was watching after Black Friday were pointing to similar kinds of numbers around location targeting, and rich video, rich media in ads. So, I'm all for it.
That any kind of new and anything above and beyond what you're seeing right now, so any kind of interactivity or any kind of awareness or aware ads, like what we're talking about, location-based ads and rich media. I'm not a big fan. I don't know about you, but I'm not a big fan of the full screen takeover ads that I don't like that stuff. Like inside of an app experience, don't bring me somewhere else. But maybe there is an opportunity through to enable commerce in other ways. But certainly, rich media ads are driving awareness now. But I think it's just the latest and greatest. Where I think it really comes down to is we talked about earlier is these big networks of ads. Like Yoose and like InMobi that are able to target based on location and based on context and characteristics that really make them more effective. But at least,
and apparently the value is there too. I mean, the same study goes on to say that where is it here? The location focused ads command premiums of 2 to 5 times the average CPM. And they even goes on to say if you're doing rich media or video ads, it can be 5 to 10 times, right? So.
Well, I'll tell you, anybody who puts an ad for the opening 9 minutes of the new Star Trek movie into their app, you will blow it off the roof, right? I mean, it's not just about dumb video like your corporate video. It's about being smart about it and exclusivity and context but yeah, if anybody's done that, let me know. I want to watch that. I don't want to go see The Hobbit to go and see that.
And just to wrap it up, I mean, you don't have to pay 5 or 10 times, the average CPM to, run an ad on This Week in Location-Based Marketing. It can be pretty cheap and pretty cost-effective. So
it is.
Rob and I are very, very open to discussing.
We have very good reach, and if you are interested in taking this content, and if you want an extra post a week on your website consistently, this is episode number 108 in 108 weeks. We have never missed a week in this entire time. These 2 years we've been doing it. So please, let us know. We'll give you some embed code. You just got to pop it in there. We'll give you all of the notes, everything that you need to do, all the show notes and the links to the show. Do not worry. We will provide it. All you have to do is give us a venue. So either one, give us your money or give us a little bit of spots on your website. We'll give you some content and some value. Steve, I will leave you with the closing words.
Yeah, I love doing this show every week. I love talking about this news. I love doing this with you, Rob, and we're constantly encouraged to continue on, and there's just so much great stuff to talk about every week. So I want to thank everybody for listening, for watching, for 108 episodes, and we look forward to episode 109 next week. Thanks.
All right, everybody. See you next week.